Thank you. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me over here, and also for Master of Ceremony. Thank you for a warm welcome. Happy New Year to all of you. Selamat Tahun Baru. In Filipino, they say Maraming Salamat Mabuhay. Just to give a little quick introduction of you, only Dr. Gitanis and Robi mentioned, just to put in context, I grew up in a plantation in Sha'a, in Johor. I lived through poverty. I know what's the meaning of poverty. So poverty is not a joke. So we always need to appreciate what we went through. And that's what drives me to study very hard. At the end of the day, I only wanted to do two things, either to work for academia or to work for international movement to contribute to poverty alleviation. But eventually, that came through and I ended up with UNDP. I started in Malaysia in 1995. For years and 2000, I became international staff of UNDP, and last 25 years I've been out. So much so I know more about outside Malaysia than inside Malaysia. So today, next slide, please. So what I don't want to pretend, all right? What I would like to do is to share my experience, and I also during the discussion, I hope I can pick up your brain more, Malaysia. Why not my own perception till now? My own opinion, but I did not stay here for too long. So in this presentation, this is what I will do. A quick overview. I think it's important still to look at the global context. I mean, probably a little bit of MDGs and transition to SDGs. And of course, you know what is SDGs, but still it's important to look into it. And the global and regional trends. And then I will zoom in on SDG localization in the Philippines, very different context, but some similarities that I'll share. And I also will provide my own personal reflections. My own personal reflections working in many different countries, how do I see perhaps some thought for Malaysia. Quickly on Millennium Development Goals. Millennium Development Goals was launched in 2000 following the UN Millennium Summit, a landmark global compact, 189 countries, UN member states agreed to pursue. And it was very much focused on the most pressing challenges at that time, human development issues, particularly poverty eradication. You can see there are 8 goals, right from poverty eradication, private education. And it was not a comprehensive goal, but it was a global compact which brought many member states together, and there was a global blueprint for globally actors to work together. So that was the start of Millennium Development Goals. But having said that, while Millennium Development Goals brought countries together to work in poverty alleviation, poverty reduction, to work on health, education, and it mobilized all actors, but it has its own shortcomings. MDGs were fairly narrow scope. You only see 8 goals. It was focused more on developing countries. If you look at SDGs is for everyone. Doesn't matter whether you're a developed country or developing country, but MDGs focused more on developing countries. It was a top-down design, largely drafted by the UN officials and global countries. From time to time, I had that experience. In 2000, I was in New York, and I got that taste how UN officials work in some of the documents. So it was very much top-down document. And countries were not really involved in setting the goals targets. Since it was a top-down. But having said that, it was an important instrument, and if you ask did MDG goals from 2000 to 2050 to achieve the broader goals, the answer is no, partially achieve the goals. And that's how it provided the platform for the second phase of the blueprint SDGs. So in a sense, 2015 is the bridge for sustainable transformation. MDGs from 2000 to 2015, and the 15 is a transition here. In 2015, September General Assembly, the SDG was given birth, and we know it's for 15 years until 2030, and we also call that as Agenda 21. I'm sure all of you have seen this 15-year goals, 15 years, 17 goals, 169 target, 200 effective indicators. Is quite broad-based, unlike MDGs. if you look at this particular slide, it gives you the perspective of SDG hierarchy, the dynamics of the connection. The bottom part is more on the environment, on the biosphere, how it's related to society, how it relates to economy and broader partnership. That's the dynamic. So you can see number of SDGs are in different hierarchy. That's one way of looking at SDGs, is the hierarchy and the dynamics of connection. The next way is, I'm sure all of you may have seen this, the 5 P's that represent the basic principle of SDGs: the people, the planet, peace, prosperity, and partnership, and then how the goals are tied on these 5 P's. These 5 P's are very important. Then let's quickly look at the current situation. There are a lot of debate going on. Is SDGs relevant at the moment? Some countries, particularly some developed countries, do not buy SDGs. A lot of developing countries put emphasis on SDGs. So is it relevant? It's not relevant in the current context. If we look at the current context, particularly year 2020s, we see global policy crisis at the global level. Multiple global crises. Climate change, biodiversity loss, geopolitical conflict. You can see geopolitical conflict in many parts of the world. In our own region, you see Afghanistan, you see Myanmar. Not to say other countries doesn't have conflict, but these are an example. In Arab world, you have many conflicts. So Ukraine is another conflict. So we had that issue. Then comes 2020's COVID-19. It was a disaster for the whole world. It did not hit one country, it hit everybody, and it has a devastating impact on communities. In fact, some of the gains that were made as SDGs reverse back because of COVID. So against this backdrop and the challenges the last few years, Agenda 2030 by SDGs remain as strong and very that nobody should question on SDGs. That's my opinion. We should work towards achieving SDGs for the common goal for the whole world. It's extremely important. Questions and foreign policy should be not on behalf of anyone. This is my personal opinion. Okay. Then let's look at quickly the global SDG progress. We are still another 5 years now, so 2016. 10 years is over. Next 5 years. Where are we on global SDG progress? Only 18% of the SDGs are on track. You can see in the green, 17% moderate progress. Sorry, 31% moderate progress, 17% marginal progress, and some are regressive. So if we look at the chart, we can tell a quick story. So let me highlight a couple of quick pointers on this particular global picture. Certainly, globally, SDG is off track. But having said that, at the global level, advances have been made. And if you look at advances, we can say good progress has been made in mental and child mortality, certainly reduced. Social protection coverage, broad-based, increased. HIV/AIDS, we look at the number as reduced. Internet usage has increased globally. Now, at the global level, women hold 27% seats in parliament. Not a fantastic figure, but comparatively, that's gone up compared to 2022. But progress is uneven. There are huge challenges. 1 in 10 people still live in extreme poverty. That's not the case in Malaysia, very well. Hunger remains above the pre-pandemic level. Pre-pandemic, we did quite well, but pandemic really affected the whole world. So hunger has gone up. 1 in 10 girls marry before 18. And when I talk about single mothers, I think this is pretty bad. 18 years and below, you're still a child. You should enjoy your life, not to become a mother and then have huge implications for health. So how do you handle that, right? So 1 in 1 in 10 girls marry before 18. I don't have to talk about climate and biodiversity. In the reverse, I'll show you a little bit more. Food insecurity is a big issue. And then when we talk about gender equality, I mean, this is something probably you may have heard, but every time I go in any forum, I repeat. At the global level, the UN analysis shows that gender equality, if you want to achieve gender equality, we have 300 years away to achieve gender equality. I mean, that's terrible. Men and women are equal. Post gender equality, we're not talking about gender equality, but 300 years away is unfavorable. Conflict is on the rise. As we speak, 110 to 120 million people are forcibly displaced. Displacement is a very big issue in the world. So, if we want to move forward, SDG can help. But in order to achieve the SDGs, we need financing. Do we have financing for SDGs? It's a question. So, let's look at the financing picture. Global wealth at the moment is US 477 trillion. That's a global wealth. I think one of the AI companies, which is the leading AI company,
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what's the value of NVIDIA? 5 trillion. They're much bigger than any, I think they're bigger than 3 given economy in the world. I think India is just getting close to that. Much more bigger. Global wealth is 477 trillion. But we have a financing gap of 4.2 trillion every year to achieve SDG. This is a figure for 2025 to 2030. What is 4.2 trillion? It's 1% of the global wealth. It's not a big amount. But do we have that amount of money to reach the SDG? That we don't, because the priority of the world has changed. More money is going to defense instead of development. So that has tilted the picture. But if the world puts that together, this is not it's not a difficult target to achieve. It's an easy target to achieve, but we are struggling. 4.2 trillion is a big amount, I must say, but it's 1% of the global wealth. It can be done, but we are not anywhere closer. So in a sense, are we going to achieve SDG 2030, Agenda 2030 SDGs? It's a question mark. We will explore a little bit as we move forward. So that's the global picture. Let's go to Asia Pacific. Where is Asia Pacific? In Asia Pacific, 70 to 80% targets achieved. And certainly Asia Pacific is region is behind schedule to achieve SDG targets. You have heard from the SCAP reports. It will take another 32 years for Asia Pacific to achieve SDGs. We are talking about 30 plus another 32 years. The region really suffers from disasters. The region is the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emission, largely from 2 countries, China and India. But in the region is also achieving SDGs, it's also because of China and India. Poverty rate has gone down just because of China and India, plus Indonesia. The bigger countries contribute in the achievement. And I think in Asia Pacific, we also see quite a bit of possibility with subsidies, and there's a big debate is going on. Should Asia Pacific countries continue with the possibility of subsidy? But in Asia Pacific, we also see reliable data as a niche. So we don't have a good handle on SDGs because in some countries there's no reliable data. But having said that, if you look at this particular slide, Asia Pacific is overall leads most of the MDGs globally. I think only a couple of MDGs Asia Pacific is lagging behind. SDG 30 certainly lagging behind. And also SDG 14 and SDG 17. Why I talk about Asia Pacific? 58% of the world population in Asia Pacific. If Asia Pacific doesn't achieve SDGs, the world will not achieve SDGs. So the collaboration of Asia Pacific, the role SCAP will play, the collaboration within ASEAN countries, we saw different players. That's why it's really help to achieve SDGs. We have seen at the global level as well as the Asia Pacific level, SDG 13 is lagging. Let's look at a little bit the picture of SDG 13. Every time we talk about SDGs taking climate change particularly comes into the picture. And 1.5 degree always comes into the picture for any discussion when we talk about it today. Why is it so? Can anyone tell me why 1.5%, 1.5 degree is so important when we talk about climate action? Global warming, I think it talks about global warming, but why we are fighting for 1.5? Why can't 2.5? It's a question. Yeah? It is achievable, but we are setting a target. We don't want to go beyond 1.5. The reason is, if you go anything beyond, it's a question of extinction versus survival. You have many small island developing countries. For them, it's a survival. Whether they're going to be a country or whether they'll be out. Many countries in South Pacific, in Asia Pacific, island states, in Caribbean, Maldives, we don't know whether they will be a country or whether they'll be gone. In future, climate migration going to be a huge issue if this continues. That's a fight. We keep it to that level so that the sea level doesn't rise, and countries, small island states, will be surviving, and there will be a country. Otherwise, we go to 2.5%. The sea level will rise, and some of the countries will be up. I think Australia and New Zealand will be at the sea there. Huge migration. If you talk about climate change, glaciers are melting. In fact, collapse of Greenland, ice sheet, and Western Antarctica are already gone. A lot of melting is taking place in Himalayas. That will have an impact on the whole of South Asia and the rivers dry. I'm not talking about next 5 years, down the line, 40 years, 7 years, right? The picture doesn't look very good. So that's the reason SDG 13 becomes very important. The world has only one planet. There's no plan B. We only talk about plan A, and the planet is burning, and the planet is giving a very clear signal. The planet, we need to protect the planet. So can we get our act together? And that's the reason the SDG financing becomes important. Within the SDG financing, SDG 30 requires a huge amount. Even in Malaysia itself, we can see this kind of change. Okay. This is a little bit on the biodiversity loss. You can see biodiversity is also losing. If I look at the global picture, globally, every year, 10 million hectares of deforestation. 10 million hectares of deforestation, that is the size of Portugal. Nearly 95% of this deforestation happens in tropic, but the rate of deforestation is very small. With deforestation, you see loss of the biodiversity. In just over 50 years, since 1970, 35% of the world's wetlands have been lost. We call the wetlands as the lungs, like for humans, the lungs of the world. You lose lungs, can you survive? This is an analogy. So we have to protect. But wetlands is also losing. An estimated 200 billion metric tons of plastic litter end up in ocean every year. Philippines is one of the biggest contributors. Malaysia is also catching up in the race. We are also a big plastic polluter. So, with that global and regional picture, it shows the importance of SDGs. Because if we can work together on the SDGs, it will help to save the planet, and it will help to save countries to survive. And we don't have to see 189 countries becomes 170 countries in the future. But it's rare. I've been to a number of countries and I've seen the devastating impact and consequences of climate change. So with that, now I'll probably move to the second part. But before second part, since I work in Philippines, let's see how the Philippines is doing. Just a little bit of couple of bullet points on Philippines. It's a big country compared to Malaysia, 110 million population, 7,000 islands, 20 to 35 typhoons every year. And you pray to God, typhoon doesn't hit you. If it hits you, you're gone. We've seen many typhoons, and I've been to many devastated places in the Philippines. It's so sad, but you can't help it. with the global warming, Taiwan is becoming more rampant and more stronger. In Philippines, corruption is very high. Malaysia, I think they're doing better, but one MDG did not show good sign from Malaysia. I also can speak about it during the discussion. And part of Philippines still have issues related to conflicts. Then the post-conflict situation, we call the place as Bangsa Moro Muslim Mindanao. It's southern Mindanao, a lot of Muslims are concentrated, and there was a conflict for them to be on their own. But now they're part of Philippines, but still post-conflict is there, and time to time, why conflict over that. So the peace building and SDG 6 becomes very important over that. In Malaysia, I could not pick any data like this. I went to the Ministry of Economy and picked up this. How data, I wasn't sure because they did not indicate the date in the slide when I picked up. But at least I see Malaysia is doing much better, 43%. Some indicators shows 43. I don't know. At least I see 43% of the SDGs on track in Malaysia. Maybe I might not be correct, and you can correct me. And Malaysia has done fairly well. But having said that, other day I was in the hospital to do my routine medical checkup, and somebody was there with a UNICEF book, and they brought me a brochure asking to contribute, and I was contributing UNICEF is quite important, UNDP, right? And I see 1 in 5 children in Malaysia are stunted. And I can't believe it. Do you know 1 in 5 children in Malaysia is stunted? And this is happening in Malaysia. I was out of Malaysia for a long time. I can't believe it. That's the brochure UNICEF did. And then in contrast, I see obesity is a problem in Malaysia. 11 area of obesity. So I just can't make it. This is something I want to ask you during the discussion. You know, why does this need? That means there is inequality. I see stunting is happening largely in Kelantan, in Terengganu, in Pahang, whereas obesity is in this back side of the central. So there is a problem in Malaysia. So I think these issues need to be looked into it. And I see from my quick reading from Malaysia, SDG 13, SDG 14, SDG 16, and certainly SDG 5 will require quite a bit of attention. So that's a little bit of picture of global, regional, Philippines and Malaysia. Now we move to SDG localization back I should be talking about. So SDG localization, why do you have to do SDG localization? Right? For me, the national level SDG achievements cannot happen without localization. But if you look at global level, they talk about SDG localization. For them, SDG localization is at the national level. Because when you look at global level, they talk about every country. That countries contribute to the regional perspective and achievement of the regional SDGs. But when we form within countries, we talk about localization within the country, different states, local level, and that's where we talk about localizing is the process of taking into account subnational context of development. The action already that 2030 and Agenda 2030 talks very, very positively on leading one behind it of that, the element of that. I think localization is part of it. So, in that sense, let me reflect to you some of the works in the last 5 years, what at least I've been associated in Philippines, what kind of work we have done on localization of SDGs in the Philippines. Number one, we helped the Philippine government on data collection. Data is extremely important. Without data, you cannot come up with a solid policy. So in that sense, we did help the Ministry of, we call it planning, the data, and now they are all at Department of Economic Development Authority, but now they do as Department of Planning and Development. We help them on the digital platform for SDGs at the national level and local level. More importantly, we supported on creation of, not creation, government created, but we were the active supporter of the SDG chamber, stakeholder chamber for SDGs, where we bring all different stakeholders at the national level as well as local level. We did, as UNDP supported the SDG voluntary local review. We talk about national review, but we very much focused on SDG local review. In that process, we organized many stakeholder workshops, deep listening, and to come up with a voluntary local review in a couple of cities. Unlike Malaysia,
through the cities.
yeah, we work through cities. Malaysia is slightly different. There, the city mayors are elected. Local government, all leaders are elected. And fiscal decentralization, there's a fiscal decentralization, money posts. So if they have a problem planning, they can achieve SDGs at the local level. Of course, at the federal level, they have lower allocation for big ministries, but local level, local government units play a very important role. Provincial government play a very important role. So the experience I got to I think this is probably a worthwhile experience. I must say, we did not do that many local reviews. We did like for 2 or 3 city mayors. We work with champions. There are many champions for SDG. There are many spoilers for SDGs too. So we choose the champions. We work with them. And then the Mayor's Forum is something very important in Philippines. So these were presented at Mayor's Forum, and that created competition among mayors. Everybody wants to shine. So we become a change agent in that process, working with the championing mayors. So, but in Malaysia, I don't think so that's the system. But over there, the mayors play a very important role. So we work with the League of Municipality, the Mayor's Forum, to take this very strongly, and we work also with the private sector. That's one example. Then, as we talk about 20 to 25 typhoons, another way, whenever I go for any meetings, I always say, with due respect to Philippines, I say Philippines is a supermarket for disaster. What disaster you want? You choose. You want typhoon? 20 to 25 typhoon. You want a volcanic eruption? And you want flooding? What disaster you want?
It's that.
It's that. Malaysia is so lucky. We are lucky. So in that sense, SDGs, how do you do SDGs? Climate change has to be part and parcel of SDGs. Whatever gains you make can be wiped out with one typhoon. So there are a number of provinces facing the Pacific Ocean because the typhoons come from the Pacific Ocean. If you look at Philippines, many provinces are facing Pacific Ocean. The people need to manage, and they need to be resilient. So UNDP, with the government now, supports 10 most disaster-prone provinces to support them with the disaster management and resilience. So that includes science and technology, early warning, detection, a lot of pilot projects like what we all do. With the local stakeholders coming up with a pilot project, with the hope that it can be scaled up. That's another example of SDG localization. Next one, I mentioned to you, one part of Philippines is on a post-conflict situation at the moment. That's Bangsamoro, Muslim Mindanao, southern part of Mindanao. So peace building and stabilization is extremely important over there. Peace, and sometimes what we look at it, I think that's my experience when I worked in Sudan. Over here, peace is, we take it for granted. Peace, we have peace, but peace can be tilted very quickly if you have one incident. So we should not undermine on the importance of peace. Peace, stabilization, I think if you look at our own Vision 2020, that's one of the basic pillars. It's that prosperity, the basic pillar for our Vision 2020 in Malaysia. So in Bangsamoro, Muslim Mindanao, we support peace building. We support peace dividend. Without peace dividend, there's no peace building. We very much support the socio-economic development of the people in Bangsamoro. And when I looked at the report you gave me, and then he said some of the projects are very much similar projects to look at that. And people really appreciate that kind of activity. But after working 25, 30 years in UNDP, I can tell you, pilot projects not going to change that. If the pilot projects are not going to be scaled up, you will not see much progress. So I'll also talk that in my personal reflection. Then next, as I mentioned to you, marine pollution, plastic pollution, marine pollution is very, very big. In fact, they're the biggest contributor to the whole world. And if you look at their ocean, it's terrible. So now we tackle the problem and we situate that as part of SDG 13, SDG 14. We work with 20 primary local government units. I was fortunate enough to have a very solid relationship with the European Union. The European Union gave UNDP 30 billion euros, and then together with the government, we met up, which are the most fully committed provinces and which are provinces with the help. So we work primarily 20 LGUs and 40 secondary LGUs do support on the eradication of waste management, focusing also on plastic, and we call it circular economy. I think circular economy is a popular concept. So the circular economy is very important, but as part of the circular economy, what I'm bringing to feel is mostly circular economy is focused on end product. How do we recycle? How do we manage the waste and whatnot? I think when we talk about circular economy, we need to have systemic change, consumption pattern change. I do not believe exactly how you can buy clothes. I go maybe go buy the clothes, but I think we have to reduce the little bit. And we need to have a systemic change in our mind. Otherwise, circular economy concept will not be successful. That's another localization of SDGs that I wanted to mention. Then, that's how some of the places in Philippines would go. You go, nice, good to see on the picture, but very low spaces, terrible. And it's also cost crime. And then another localization of SDGs was very much again focusing on SDG 13, but this is renewable energy. As we mentioned, it's an archipelago, 7,000 islands. Some of the remote islands do not have access to electricity. Usually, these businesses not other than that. We look at the most poorest provinces actually work. So we supported on the expenses of renewable energy in those rural areas. And I must say, I'm extremely encouraged when I see rural areas where we work, women are the champions. They manage the whole renewable energy portfolio. So in so much so in number of provinces now, the province has taken off the board on the idea and then they provide budget on their own to need and to scale up. And it's a very successful experience. It may not be the story in Malaysia, but I'd like to hear from you how Malaysia is looking into. Next, we do a lot of social innovation. We're beginning to feel when we talk about SDGs, old methods doesn't work. We need to bring new methods. We need to bring AI into it. We need to bring digitalization into it. And we need to mobilize young people. We have done a survey in Philippines, and we realized this is a fact. When people are young, they're very motivated. They want to work on climate change. When they hit 40s, they don't care about climate change. Their focus is their family. Wow. They have to earn. They have to fend for their family. It takes away. When you're old, some of them are still interested, but some of them not interested. So age factor plays a very important role. And it's a reality of life. At a certain stage of your life, your idealism is very strong, what to contribute. But when you're a certain part of your life, your responsibility changes. That's a survey result. That's something we need to factor in as we also do advocacy on SDGs. So we do a lot of innovative work at the local level, and deep listening is one of it. Without deep listening, I think most of our creation will not be successful. One of the very important areas that we support in the Philippines, indigenous people. As we talk about LNOB, more often we see indigenous people are left behind from the development. In most countries. I think in a sense, like also probably the story collection, we get highlight and look and tell the what's the situation in Malaysia. In Philippines, they don't even know what's the percentage of the indigenous population. They only have not. Some report says 5%, some report says 10%, some report says 15%. So even if you say 10%, 10% of 110 million population, 11 million, we are left behind. So we have a dedicated program for economic empowerment of indigenous and girls. In that area, we put a lot of emphasis, again, to build resonate, we develop programs from, of course, the marginalized and the man-related, because women are far more left behind in the indigenous community compared to that. That was another example. Then partners for SDG localization. Of course, this is not all encompassing, because SDGs has to be whole of government approach, whole of society. But when I was there, these are some of the key people with whom I work. We had a very strong working relationship with House of Representatives. The SDGs committee for in the House of Representatives, we work very closely. Of course, national government, local government, and we work particularly with governors. And some of the governors are the big champions of ethics. SA is doing research over there, we call them adults. And I already mentioned to you, mayors play a very important role. And particularly, we have a very, very strong, close working relationship with Bangsa government. It's a regional government. There are two systems. The old Philippines is a presidential system. In Bangsa it's a parliamentary system. So we also work very, very closely with the Bangsa government. Of course, rest of it, society, academic, private sector, UN agencies, Asian Development Bank, World Bank, and trade-based organizations. All of them are very, very important. Let's talk about SDG organizations. 3 more slides for me. But this is something Dr. Dennis and I wanted to highlight to you all. 30 minutes left. Gender equality, we call it JEXC. When we work, this is more UNDP, but we champion this concept and government now taken on board this concept. When we look at any SDGs, we look at JEXC, gender equality, disability, social inclusion. Without this, there's no LNOP. The importance of JEXC is very, very important to look at the vulnerable sector of the people, and we need to recognize some of the section of the population in countries left behind, and we don't have specific maps on it, we leave them behind. So we look at JEXC, and we have indicators in many, many programs. Even if it's a pilot program, we make sure JEXC is one of the key elements of program project development. Okay, my own personal reflection, right? 25 countries, I don't know how many countries I've been, many countries. I visited about 160 countries in the world, many meetings, many different places, and I observe. When I go to Japan, it's a different story. South Korea, a different story. I keep asking why Malaysia can't be Japan and South Korea. We could have been. Right? But anyway, for me, the world is a global village. Local action will contribute to global solutions. Localization of SDG is important. And I was firm believer government and whole of society approach. Without that, nothing happens, It will become otherwise specific sector-oriented approach will not yield much result. And local action and localization is important, very important to listen to the voices of local actors, very, very important. And as we speak about financing, domestic financing is extremely important. When I talk about domestic financing, there are many different channels. Right? You can bring private sector, you can bring public-private sector partnership. In the Philippines, one thing cool they do, I probably also would like to hear from you, there's a SIM tax. SIM tax is from tobacco, from alcohol. They basically use the SIM tax for SDGs. That SIM tax is basically, they take it and they use that money largely for SDG. Perhaps if it's not done in Malaysia, that's something I want to look into it. And Dr. Nelson, I read your report. I see a lot of good projects, but for me, pilot project has to go in a scale. If we don't scale up, it's a failure. then there's no impact. One pilot project will be successful, it will stay alive, will be very successful until the funding comes from us. After that, it's gone. So the ownership of it, the scaling up of this would be important, but not everything can be scaled up, I understand. But if you don't focus on scaling up, then it dies off. Most UN projects have that problem. So donor driven. Gradually, also, okay, after the money is gone, there's no ownership and it dies. And then once you're doing auditing and evaluation for this excellent project, but not most sustainable. So scaling up is extremely important. Then equity matters. Do not leave behind one of the Google. In the case of Malaysia, I want you to answer me why there's funding and why there's a risk. I don't understand. Please help me. And I understand in the case of Malaysia, hunger is becoming an issue. In Malaysia, hunger is becoming an issue. I don't understand. That's why the statistics and what I read shows that in Malaysia, I could be wrong. Having said that, one SDG is critical, doesn't matter at what level and what state of development you are. Whether you are most developed country or you are least developed country, you are island state, good governance is key for development. Without good governance, no one will move forward. Corruption is key to be tackled. Without that, I think country cannot move forward. So good governance is key. And in that sense, I see for Malaysia, from my little reading, SDG 5, SDG 13, SDG 16 is very important. Just an anecdote. When I became an international staff in 2000 in Kazakhstan, I used to send so many people for study tour from Kazakhstan to Malaysia. Poverty elevation was falling, not much corruption, everything was good. And everybody used to talk about Malaysia, I want to go to Malaysia. By the time I ended up in Philippines, they said, no, we don't want to learn from Malaysia. And they were setting up a sovereign fund. They said they like to learn from Temasek Foundation, not from Kazana. It just changed. That's why you had problem for foreign direct investment. I mean, things are changing now, more on a positive direction. But one incident can change your perception in the whole world. And it links back to SDGs. And last but not least, innovation and new technologies is extremely important for moving forward. So AI is important, digitalization important. COVID-19 taught us a very key lesson on the importance of digitalization. Without that, I think learning losses cannot be addressed. A lot of countries have a lot of learning losses. I think if we want to address that, we need to really catch up on digitalization. So for me, as a retired staff member of the UN Development, there is no future without hope. I've been 13 times to North Korea. But I hope for North Korea. It will not remain the same. And sometime point, the leader may be toppled, something will happen. So you always need to have hope. Without hope, there's no development. With that, let me stop. If there's any question, I can take it from you. If there's no question, I'll ask you a question because I will try to understand a little bit more of the relation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Delta, I think you have gone through SDGs, the policy, the framework, the UN deliverables. You have also looked at personal suggestions, you've looked at data and various other things. Now, we'll see whether online there are any questions. Are there? Okay. Yeah. Okay, we can start from here, Dr. Khairul. Kalau ada soalan. Okay, Dr. Khairul.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you, for the fascinating talk. Also, interesting sharing in the Philippines. In November, me and Zoel and also Ara, we visited Quezon City and we saw the extent of the power that the LGs actually have in moving the needles on the ground. So it's a very interesting experience. But I have a question. It's separate from that. It's just relating to what you said at the beginning, the poly crisis, and then you ended your talk with hope.
despite whatever challenges that we face. I'm just wondering, maybe extend the reflection a bit more. Over the weekend, we just saw the world's most powerful country abduct, literally kidnapping the president of a sovereign country and brought him back to their country. And the past 2 or a bit more so years, we've also been watching in real time on social media the murders and the killings of innocent people in Palestine, in Gaza. I'm just wondering, the UN system is something that's, in practice, it still very much speaks to people who are socialized into what it does, right? You have worked for the UN. Academics would be very, very aware of what the UN does. I'm just wondering if you have actually thought about the future of global, say, for example, global development frameworks, and whether or not there will be a moment, or there will come a time when confidence is just no longer there for all these initiatives, because UN and UN bodies are seen as very ineffective in responding to all these crises. Just that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, who will policeman okay. You want to take a few more?
Yeah, few
Okay,
questions.
yeah, Rama.
This is very straightforward question. We are heading towards 2030 now. What is post-2030? Whether there will be SDG or what do you think for you? If the number of years.
What in 2030? Okay.
Post-2030.
Okay, Zoel Naman.
Okay, hi, Doctor. I think there's a lot of what doing is very similar. So I'm curious about 2 questions. Along the journey, what do you feel that you have did correctly, did well? And the second question is, if given a chance, what you will do differently?
Okay, let me take these first 3 questions first, and we go to the next round. Quezon City, Mayor Joy Belmonte, very good friend of mine. They are part of the circular economy program. Very, very close, very vibrant.
We met.
Yeah, and when you tell her suggestions, she buys it quite young. Yeah, of course, comes from their own family. They are in Philippines, right from president to the most local level, our kampong level. It's all family business. Everything is within your own family. Uncle, uncle, it's a son, father. That's something they have to change. That's very good.
Good governance.
Yeah, good governance is key. SDG is very, very important. Coming back on a bigger picture, I can speak more freely. If this question would have come to you when I was in UNDP, I say I will defer this question to Secretary General. That's how we work, right? Certain questions is politically sensitive. We will not handle that. But now I'm okay. I'm a retired person, so I can speak my mind. For me, why did UN was given birth after Second World War? Right? Second World War was over. There was a platform. The countries came together. The same reason, the global crisis, that the body can resolve it. That was the principle. Human rights was part of the principle. Equality was the part of the principle. There was a real reason why UN was set up. Of course, UN also over the time bloated. And UN is bloated not because UN wants to do many things. The member states give the UN many different agenda. There are almost 3,000 agenda in the UN. So if you want to do more things, you need more budget. In that process, the UN also lost discipline. Number of agencies will do the same thing. So the UN does need a reform. But having said that, that's a smaller problem. The bigger problem is the UN will, if UN can function, what is UN? UN only can function with the member states. Member states dictate the agenda, member states contribute the funding. Without member states, there's no UN. Of course, UN has to reform. So what we see, what do we see now as part of the global picture? The poly crisis and also leadership style changed. In Europe, their focus is get back here. Ukraine. Are they interested in SDGs? They're not interested in SDGs anymore. Their own focus is Ukraine. Right? The poly crisis has pulled them, the war has pulled them into different sides. Then at a global level, you have a new leadership coming up in the US. He doesn't believe in SDGs. And he doesn't, and he's quite blunt about it. That's a nice part of it, right? He doesn't believe it. Nobody went for the COP30 from US in Brazil. Climate change is a big problem. We're talking about one planet, right? So, but is it going to remain the same? There's up and down in politics. There's a change in leadership, things will change. But somebody else is now coming and filling the vacuum. China is becoming a leader now. We talk about SDGs. China is the one leading now. India is stepping in. Brazil is coming in. Right? That's how the world politics, right? But it's very sad to see that most of the fundings are not now going more for defense. Defense is taking huge funding, even in Europe. European countries are the most supportive in the past, but the funding is not coming through. But is it going to be a permanent problem? I don't think so. That's where the hope comes in. Things, it goes up and down like stock market. We hope that the cost correction. But when the cost correction will happen, I don't know. Hope sooner than later. And we work with that hope, right? But happy to see many other countries that tapped up and contributing. Must say China is contributing a lot. So that's number one. But number two, UN will become irrelevant also if space is not given to them. Now you look at Gaza. It's a direct bilateral resolution. US with Israel, with few countries, they can solve the problem. Ukraine is the same case. UN is not part of the equation, but that is dictated by certain style of doing leadership. If that continues and they can resolve the problem, why do you need UN? That's the question coming up. Right? Well, we can solve everything bilaterally, we don't do it. But many issues I've seen personally in Africa, and African countries are the biggest voice. They say without UN, we cannot solve African problems. So Africa are the most least developed countries and developing countries, right? For them, it's very clear. Without UN, they cannot solve the problem. So there are different voices. Let's see how things will evolve in the coming years. Rahman?
Post.
I don't want to talk about post. I want to talk about next 5 years.
No, because I saw in New York sometime back then, there's the new SDGs, SDGs.
Yeah. No, I'm sure that the global framework, we don't know whether it's SDG, MDG became SDG, SDG is 1.20, we don't know. But I think there will be something. But by that time, you also have to see what's the global dynamic, how the situation. I'm sure. But this question keep coming back as a rep when I was in Philippines. I thought I'm not interested in that. I want to focus on these 5 years coordinated. Let it come. We will go with the flow. Whatever comes, it comes. But what can we do in the next 5 years? Because for me, it's only one planet. You can't protect your planet. You guys will see, we will not see. In our generation, we had a very good life. The younger generation will see the impact of climate change. And we can see it in Malaysia. And then coming back, the last question from you. From what did, at least in my personal experience, let me give you a quick analogy. Look at Afghanistan. Taliban managed to take over Afghanistan just like that. Trillions of dollars went to Afghanistan. Very quickly, went to Kabul, set up these ministries, concentrated in Kabul, and elites managed to have that funding and they decided what to do. They were not connecting with the local people. There was no localization. Just like that, Taliban could take over the country because Talibans they connected with the local people they have. So my experience, when I say experience working in Sudan, that's one to lead back. I never believed in a volatile country like Sudan that I have to work all the time with the system and the elites. Of course, my relationship is very important to Sudan. I worked at the federal ministry, but I worked a lot at the sub-national level, at the community level. For me, if you don't work at the community level, if there's no peace, there's no stabilization. Now you know what's happening in Sudan, right? Two generals are fighting, things are gone. But I still get many WhatsApp messages to communities that I supported. Sir, thank you very much because of you we are doing. That's something we require. So that's when the localization comes in. There's something that I think we have to do much better is scaling up. I've seen in my life many projects are successful, and at the end of the day, it doesn't go anywhere. There is no ownership, there is no funding, things doesn't go, and if that's the case, why do you want to do pilot? That's where I see the event in China. China is one country I've seen. One small project you did China in lake in 90s, changing the bulb and making energy efficiency, how a bulb can help you to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and whatnot. They saw that implemented nationwide. That reduces. So one small idea, if you implement across the board, it can change. I wanted to share my own thoughts. I went to China, I worked with a school, I support with them, and I told the headmaster, hey, I'm doing this for you and all that. Can we combine this together with tree planting? Taking of course, I said, why tree planting? Then I asked him, don't you awareness on climate change and all that? He said, sir, not very much, and I don't know whether our education system very promotes climate change. Then I said, it's okay, we still do. Then I was hunting to get a free tree to go to plant in the school, and I can't get it. I went to free, they said they can help, but at the local level, you can't. But in Philippines, anywhere I go, any projects I do, there's a free trees, locally oriented trees, the specific species. And just imagine, if you can have a program, the whole school in Malaysia plants trees. That's what I'm talking about, a scale, not a small scale. We can't plant trees in that school and talk about greenhouse gas emissions. But just plant the whole schools in Malaysia when they graduate second primary school at level 6 or your UPR graduation, you plant trees nationwide campaign, and you have relationship with your own school, and we can calculate how much trees you can plant, how much greenhouse gas emission can be permitted, but you have to do it in scale. If you're interested, I'll be very interested to work in this kind of concept. You have to think big. The small pilot things will not contribute to tackling the problem.
Okay.
We have one question online.
Yeah. Prof. Rashila, do you want to ask your question? Okay. This is Prof. Rashila.
Hello, Dr. Selva. Thank you so much for the talk that you gave. It's important that the way you contextualize it from the back, from the MDGs and so on. Actually, to some extent, the question that I wrote, you have kind of answered it already, but that's okay. So I wrote there, if we were to compare, you had one slide just now on the world data, and then we compared it with the Asia Pacific data. The Asia Pacific has actually outaged the SDG progress compared to maybe most of the regions. So, based on your most recent answer, actually, you mentioned that, localization is the way to go. But at the same time, are there, from your observation through Asia Pacific specifically, what might be some of the best practices that you can share with us so that we can actually, for the next 5 years, what are the things that we have learned that we can actually deepen our engagement, especially at the local level? So that's my question. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else here? Yes, please.
I have two questions. Thank you very much for the sharing. I actually feel quite inspired by all you have done. The first question is actually I'm triggered by the statement on young people become not interested in SDG in the first one. I could not get through that part because I always thought young people probably want financial security before being more social. So imagine that in cross-poverty for which is a template that really start asking, what my focus on my art and really want to do something good for society. So I don't quite understand why you get that pattern. Second is also on the scale. I'm very, very interested. I believe the scale of solution needs to match the scale of the problem. I think that's a concern. We have a solution doesn't match the scale of the problem. But the question really is, what are the important factors that you think we should consider for getting out the market impact?
Okay, Karu. Oh, Matt.
Thank you, Doctor, for the refreshing talk, despite a really with MDG Era basis. Okay, so I have a very direct question regarding climate change and solutions. So carbon credit has been the key place that I think it's something that has existed for quite some time, and then it's sort of like faded behind the scene for a while, and then in fact right now being I think favors around governments around the world right now on carbon credit and GH and things like that. So my question is basically is there any greenwashing? Okay, why about greenwashing and carbon credit? And that carbon credits really work. Okay.
You want to give Karu?
My two questions. First question, long time at this sheet. Today, they person to ask which district. This personal you have trained over 20, 40, 50. I feel that why the setup is out of 70 SDGs. I feel that I get my personal one. I don't know whether it's question or not. I want to ask you clearly. The 30, 40, 50 should be the first, second, third. I mean, the climate change is the basic thing in terms of the approach. And also, coming back to our bogey, we have only one bogey, 40 and 50. So I feel that all other things are related to these two things. This should be done first. These are the things that we should really prepare to safeguard of this thing. That's my first question. My second question, just now we were telling about localizing SDGs is the first way that we can achieve the exactly exploitation of the I think the best way will be in education system, educating the youngsters. So I'm worried about my great grandchildren, whether they will know about this movie, whether there will be a place for them in this movie. Because we are facing only one movie. And our education system, just like to get a lot of advice. What is your advice to the education minister of Malaysia about education on SDGs, that is, which we already practice, that is a geography. See, now we have only Form 1, Form 2, Form 3. Form 4, Form 5, only not in urban area. Urban schools are no more. You want to take new geography, you need to take only in outskirts area, I mean, that means I'm telling that we are not giving importance to the geography, which is a basic of our life. Human being living in this boomi. You see, they are taking for themselves, which we should change the mindset. So, what is your advice? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Prof.
Rashida.
Prof. Rashida. There are many examples, but if we go to a specific country, I can say that as the best example, but there will be always a critic in that country that's not the best example. But let me say that from my travel and my own exposure, I find the Zakat for SDGs in Indonesia is a good one. Conceptually, it's a very powerful way of SDG domestic financing, zakat for SDGs. Basically, they use the zakat to promote SDGs. So if there is financing gap, how do you address financing gap? I think that's one powerful example that I would like to mention. I think it is extremely relevant in the case of Malaysia. I borrowed that concept and I tried to apply that in Bangsa Muslim Mindanao because it's a Muslim population, and they were very keen. So we had a lot of interaction with Indonesia. That's one. Of course, if we talk about SDGs, while China and India pollute, they're 50% of the pollutants for greenhouse gas emission. Huh? But having said that, if the Asia Pacific is far ahead in achieving SDGs, it's because of China and India. I mean, you look at renewable energy in China. They're very committed on renewable energy, but it's also export industry for that. And it's a scale. In China, they don't do anything without scale. Once they believe, they take that as a scale. I've been to China as part of my job. In fact, when I was in New York, I was a division chief looking after China. So it took me many years, many times with China. One thing I'm extremely impressed with China is the scale. But they have to believe in it. And of course, it's a communist country. It's easy to implement it at a scale. They don't hesitate. Once they believe it's successful, they do that. India is also rapidly moving on climate change. And India is a powerhouse when it comes to renewable energy and women empowerment for renewable energy. There are very many institutes in India specifically train women do they look at it as SDG? They look at it access to energy. The energy you can do many things that will work around, but it automatically contributes. In a number of countries like Brazil, I've seen the public-private sector partnership is playing a very extremely and important role. I think that's also probably an answer. I'll come back. So I think we can look at different contexts, many different countries. I'm sure people who look at Malaysia and people also must speak about Malaysia, some of the good practices, which I don't know. I'd like to hear from you all. Question number 2 on the young people. This is a real survey that we did, not only in Philippines. We did a survey in a number of countries, and it was very surprising to all of us. When people turn 40 years, how many children? Basically, you have 2 or 3 children. They also started going to school. The whole focus is how can they earn income to send their children. You organize advocacy campaign for climate change, all that. Sorry, that's not the interest. That's not going to help in their daily life. That was what I was telling. The age factor and the socioeconomic situation plays a role. But if you are fairly wealthy, it may be a different story. I'm talking about B40. Say we take B40 in Malaysia. After 40, I don't think so. They're struggling and their focus is elsewhere. But we can bring awareness and do advocacy along that area for young people. As I said, public-private sector partnership can play a very important role, and scale is extremely important. Carbon credit, greenhouse gas emission, greenwashing, a very important question. When time to time UNDP will be wrecked, why are we working with Shell? Why are we working with the small company? We are basically forcing the PSL to legalize funding for the UN. The UN is under attack because of greenwashing. Also, one need to look into the context, but if you don't work with private sector, you can't also advance the agenda. So you need to be very careful of the greenwashing concept and have certain indicators so that you are not sucked into that kind of thing. But without private sector, you're not going to do anywhere, right? And that's why in many countries we also help you to support SDG investors map. We do an investors map, and we see map where the private sector can invest the funding. That is also part of the domestic resource mobilization. I agree with you, Kadu. For me, that's the reason I went a little deep on the SDG 30. There's only one planet. Countries will disappear. I went one time to Bangladesh, and I see a number of villages. Sea level has gone up. So reason is, what do? Instead of rearing chicken, they change it to duck. That's their game. In Vietnam now, with more typhoons coming up compared to
Netherlands, where they can put up all the solid building. In Vietnam, they're talking about teaching people how to swim. That is your easy ways. Right? So the planet, they swim. Otherwise, when typhoon hits a water race, you can't survive. Swimming becomes a basic skill, you know. So the planet, 13, 14, 15 is very important, but because it's a global instrument, 14 is important underwater for many countries. Maybe for landlocked countries, it may not be important. That's how, you know, this diversification comes. But end of the day, it's one goal. It's an environmental thing. Huh? Education, I absolutely agree. Without education, we will not go too far. That's the reason I'm talking about. It's not only the waste management, it's a systemic thinking. We need to have the systemic thinking, awareness. And I'm talking to you about a headmaster who is very keen, but he doesn't know what to do for school, how to take the climate change agenda. I asked it. Don't you, when you go for your training and all that, he said this part of your program. He said, no, we don't talk anything about climate change. So there is, it shows there is a deficiency in our data ecosystem when compared to G. Maybe you can do a advocate on this kind of issue.
Thank you. Dr. Silva. We are going to the last round. We are already 6 o'clock. Some people have to go off, childminders and all that. We got Dr. Ken. I mean, I know you cannot conclude a meeting without Panir asking a question and Ken asking you. Ken, over to Ken. And then we'll conclude. Panir said he'll let go today.
Thank you, but I'm trying to speak. Number one is scaling strategy. Two dimensions to scaling. One is from the policy governance side. How do you scale government response? So, like I experienced in the school, it's very how do you build skills and program the professional management? The other one related to this research. How do you effect assessment on scaling? Yeah, so we want to track on criminal progress. So that's the question. Number two, I want to ask you about all the prospect and future impact of the booming and now we have rare earth and with data centers. So rare earth mining is also huge. So China does that on scale. So data centers, we are channeling water for building data centers and protecting. And we are all moving to AI. What does that say about our environmental conservation?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll pick up the last one. I'm from Johor State. Huh? And I understand Johor State is one of the champion for.
Mike. Sorry, one better hearing.
So in Johor, a lot of data centers investment is coming in. And I see Johor State as a water shortage. So there's a big debate in Johor State where that the water goes. I think the awareness will come soon. Right? Investment is important, but the investment has to be sustainable. If you're not going to get the investment, but is it sustainable? In Philippines, they've taken a very clear position. At this stage, they will not go too fast on AI and data science because they're looking into this. Different countries have different trajectory how they look into it. But we can't help it. AI is going to be the new currency of the world. And is it AI data center? Whether we want to apply AI, that's another question. But we need to move with the flow, but we have to be sustainable as well. And then I come back to other questions from you. On scaling up, it's very important on the governance. Government, that's what we're talking about, role of government and whole society approach. I don't know in Malaysia, but at least in many countries I see it's very sector oriented. It is not a holistic approach. There's a lot of wastage. When it becomes sector oriented, you can't help it. You have to have sector oriented, but you have to have a holistic approach. Maybe that's something one need to work out in any countries. And as part of the holistic approach, climate change perhaps can bring everyone together as part of the holistic approach. I'm telling you, our budget, I don't know now, but in any country's budget, climate change has to be an integral part of your budget process. Otherwise, we are not going to move too far. The whole assumption will go wrong with climate change. I'm in Malaysia itself, I'm deciding happens right now. it can become severe as well. Now, not so bad, but look at Philippines, one typhoon implication is $6 billion, $7 billion lost. You take another 10 years to build. So, in that sense, government plays a very important role, but do you have champions? Because as my own experience, I mentioned to you, there are many change agents, many champions. At the same time, there are many self-centered people who don't care. So you will have to find the champions to work. I think that's what you guys probably good at it. You're working with champions. Then use that platform to look at this issue as a key agenda issue for governance to move forward. In that process, research plays a very important role. Academia play a very important role. Monitoring and evaluation becomes very important. And all that will feed into better data collection and moving forward together. Some of the bigger issues, I think we have to see record and all that is becoming a key issue, but we'll see how the geopolitics is going to play out. China has their own game, now US has their own issue. ASEAN has its own position on that. So I think the future is dependent on some of the new variables like this. Like we are too early to see which direction will go, but on investment side, the water and electricity is key, and real estate, I understand, is already done.
Okay, folks, thank you very much, Dr. Selva. I think we have had interesting conversation and interesting set of questions and answers.
I want one of you to answer, maybe you to answer why we have the issue of stunting and the issue of obesity. I don't understand.
We can discuss that over biryani after and why obesity is the cause for some.
Maybe that's the answer.
We'll discuss it when are you free to have okay. Now, I think the conversation today, in my thought, has 3 key points, and I got one suggestion for Dr. Selva if he wanted to continue to be a partner with us. The first, I think, I've always appreciated speakers or resource persons who have cross-national experience because he's able to draw out, zakat from Indonesia, the China renewable, India and women empowerment. So these are clear examples of projects or works that have worked or the level of scaling up. So I think that's something important. And for us who are doing this mapping and issue, I think we have to also start leading up the solutions of the countries, like what you asked, the issues and the scale of the solutions. So where are the solutions? Where are the examples of in countries or groups where they are solving it, they are scaling it up, it's making a change. I think that's important. I think second, in Dr. Selva's sharing, grassroots are quite key. I think this whole morning and afternoon, one of the identifications of our work here is also the grassroots, the empowerment of the grassroots, the local neighborhoods, the local leaders, the women groups. This is the strength of localizing SDG. It's not just government or high officials, but actually ordinary people on the ground and their resilience. I didn't know in Jaffna they were teaching how to swim because I think James and I goes there regularly, don't know how to swim. So maybe that's something we need to pick up. I think one real challenge for us is this issue of scaling up. Because we are all micro, we are small, we say 10 people, 40,000. So we are all excited about 1,000, 40,000 ringgit projects. They're all micro. How does it last beyond the project cycle? What? And how do we scale this up? Like how Amanai PR did and things like that, where the outreach becomes quite large and the model is a sustainable model. So I think scaling up becomes important. Those are my 3 points. Dr. Selva, we can't offer you what UNDP offered you and so forth, but we can offer you an exciting opportunity to work with us. Like UKM has honorary professors. Honorary means Tampa honorarium is the surat that you get. I thought both Dr. Kyril and Zoel will benefit by Dr. Selva's input on the ASEAN SDG SSE roadmap because of his extensive link to UNDP, like how Victor is to UNICEF and things like that. The Philippines experience or Indonesia, because we have this effort at ASEAN level and we allocated some budget and so forth. It could be through Zoom because he will be at Toronto. But if you can find the budget, then from time to time you fly in over, or he might be here and tell him early when he comes to Malaysia because of his family members. But I think the ASEAN SDG roadmap, as we focus on for the next 5 years, might be our regional process of building networks and projects on localizing SDG with community empowerment as a focus. I think we are quite weak on climate change issues, like just now the emphasis. So I think CAT side, my mapping people and the research side, we need to see how to strengthen climate change and its impact on grassroots communities and the awareness. We have quite a number of projects. So I think that's it for the moment, and I thank the communication team and other staff who worked out the PA system, the connection, and all those online. Thank you for joining us, and let's be in touch. And till the next talk, whether it is from Zoel's side or from communication side or from anyone, let's see how we work on. So thank you, and let's be in touch. Some of us signed up for dinner, so you are welcome. Others who have not signed, if you like to come, where we will have a discussion on obesity and stunted growth with biryani. And the favorite people of biryani are all seated on one row. Okay, that's it. So thank you. Let's give a hand.